So what did you do?
Well, I stumbled upon a construction site. They were building a haydock block building.
Okay.
And it was built. They were troweling mud on the outside of it for seal and texture, I guess.
Okay.
And I got a job as a gopher, basically, for that job site. I begged him for work. I said, man, I really like construction. This is cool. This is a lot better than Mickey D's, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd rather deal with the people, you know, rather than a bunch of other little kids like myself.
Right.
You know? So he put me to work on a trim job.
Okay.
And I got to cutting and nailing casing on doors.
Okay.
And that was the start of it. I ended up leaving and going to Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Had heard that it was a mecca for new construction. It started having kids, moved to Arkansas. Only took me a year to get out of Arkansas.
Right.
So then I arrived in Jefferson, Texas. Lived at Lake of the Pines on Corps of Engineer property.
Yeah.
Loved it out there. Jefferson, I loved it, but even just get out of the city. You know, go north, go east. Jefferson, like you said, Dangerfield, Pittsburgh,
New Boston,
all those areas were great. So when I landed in East Texas, when I finally made it home, I started off as a contractor because it's really all I knew.
Right,
and
right.
I had a speed square, a pencil, and a skill saw. And I was creating 110 siding. You got to have your vision, and you got to have your heart. And that's, you got to love doing it.
Right.
Because you're going to go broke doing it.
For sure.
You know, especially if you don't know how to manage your stuff. We moved to Longview. We spent a few years in Longview, had another baby. We got to do a lot of hand work in creative work that we otherwise weren't doing in the big mansions, you know. The big mansions were still 45-degree angles, cut and paste. I don't really favor commercial construction. I know it well. I've done plenty of it, but I don't favor it. Landed in Wiley.
Okay.
Doing cornice work on a bunch of tract houses up in Wiley for poultry homes and Guillen. Quite a few years in Garland. Then ended up we spent about 10 years in Garland maybe. Okay. Somewhere in there. Then ended up moving to Mesquite. Okay. Spent another 10 years in Mesquite. I'd say it was 07. I finally settled in with a contractor, a trim contractor. It was just kept going up and up and up and up the whole time. Were
you enjoying it?
Every bit of it. I got to immerse myself in my trade. Yeah. So I loved it. But 06 or 07 came around, and I came across a guy out of Mansfield that was doing the real mansions. Yeah. Preston Hollow. I started contracting myself. I did not at the time call it the Carpenter's Wood Shop. Well, I registered my name as the Carpenter. I got laughed at on a lot of job sites for being the Carpenter. So I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, but thinking back on it, that's really when the Carpenter's Wood Shop became established, was 06. Okay. It started out in a 3-foot by 6-foot space. It was the back patio of our apartment. Thankfully, ground floor. Yeah. And I started basically doing cut work for products that I was going to be installing on a larger scale in people's homes in University Park. I had a small bandsaw, bench top, picked up for probably $100 new. It may have been a Delta, may have been a Ryobi, I don't remember. And I worked it hard. Full bearing guide, didn't have a table saw. Well, I had a miter saw, but it was too big to even really do anything with in the shop setting, so it stayed as an on-site tool. Various hand tools that I would use for rough cutting and stuff, and most of my stuff was like bandsaw cut work at that time. But it was very small, very simple. Drag the shop out on the patio, do my work, drag it back in, eat dinner, go to bed. Most of what I was doing at that point then was in occupied residences. So I was doing stuff for end clients, not for the middleman. I continued to do that wherever I ended up. I would end up, at least half of that garage would end up being my workspace. It would take me an hour just to set up, to clear other stuff out of the way and set up. I'm working on becoming Martin of Fort Worth Woodshop. I'm working on becoming Sean Austin Furnishings. I'm working on getting a recognizable name, basically. Right. This club's been really great for me. Right. I am really glad I finally got over myself and joined up. It was about 3 months, I think, after the first get together, I think.
Okay.
Rockler is right down the street.
Right.
So I'm in there too much. I had seen the flyer, the first black and white flyer they'd printed.
Yeah.
They had it stacked up on the counter. And I had seen that several times. And I just kept, looking at it and going, oh, that's neat. Oh, that's a good idea. I'm glad more people are. When the first community project came up that we had doing Carmen's Tree, it was funny. It was brought up at a meeting. And everybody started throwing out these ideas across the room. It was when we were in the Grace Point church.
Right.
Because as soon as they opened the floor for discussion on it, I saw it coming. I knew it was going to happen because I've been in that environment for decades already. And it was fun. And the coolest part about it is it doesn't matter to anybody, any of us up there in the club, whether we agree or disagree. We're going to consider each other nonetheless, and all the more.
Right.
And we're going to get along, and we're going to see it through and get it taken care of.
Right.
So I went to that club meeting, and they got me hooked. The cookies helped.
Cookies at every meeting. That helps.
I've had probably a dozen people in here in the last 4 years trying to help me out.
Yeah.
The reason for getting somebody in here to do that so I can keep out there is to continue to grow.
Right.
So that I can hire an actual carpenter. When you're talking about overhead for a shop,
right.
It's almost $2,000 a month for rent. Then you got electricity and the various and sundries that are required to stay operational on the shop floor. It's a never-ending expense.
Right.
And it can be difficult to calculate. This is more of a complete environment.
Yeah.
And all the expenses are just constantly waving their arms. Come and pay attention to me.
When you stack labor on top of that.
Stack labor on top of that is crazy. I don't want anybody to work for me.
Yeah.
I want people to work with me.
Right.
Which means you got to want to be here.
So you're looking for somebody that wants to do it. Have you ever considered mentoring anybody?
I have, and I've actually tried doing that.
Yeah.
I had an apprentice last year for about 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
And it was that becomes a mentoring situation. Was so busy, and everybody wants everything done now. I didn't really have so much time to be able to do that.
Did you feel like you weren't being fair to the apprentice?
Sort of, yes.
Okay.
Directly, interpersonally, at the end of each week, I was being more than fair to the apprentice.
Okay.
Looking back at all the invoices, I think I only paid him correctly twice. Man, I really look to every experience to be more positive than negative. Every experience we encounter in life is what we make of it. I lost my father just over 10 years ago. That was very difficult and still is.
Yeah.
But it's a great thing that happened to me. It gave me a sense to find my own liberation and quit looking outside myself for approval and validation. Rather look inside myself for my own approval and validation. And that changed my life. The fact that my father had to go for that to happen, that sucks. But my father always also taught me, when you got a problem with somebody else, you need to look at yourself and figure out why you got that problem. Other people's opinions are none of your business. It's their business. Yeah, I look at all these experiences being positive experiences. Some of the experiences I'm having right now with the business, I'm stepping to them and saying, okay, what can I learn from this?
You can either use it as an excuse or you can use it as experience to grow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm done being a victim. The thing is when we're open, still, you know, we employ our humility. We learn new stuff. You know, so somebody comes up with a different idea. If I'm like, I don't know, man, you know, I got my experience. I know this is the idea. You know, what do I have to gain from that? Old guys telling me in the 90s, slow down, kid. You need to slow down. Look, you need to learn to pace yourself. If I had stopped and listened, actually considered, if I had employed humility at the time and considered these guys for what they were saying at face value and stopped projecting my own fears into their into their expressions,
keep going.
I could have learned so much more. Well, I don't know, you know, what it would have been, but I know it would have been different. It definitely would have been different today. So.